All right. Okay. All right, so sure. I'd like first of all to welcome everybody. For those of you that I may not have met, I'm Sharon Grayson. I'm the rector of Trinity Church. And this program of Living Wisely and Well on Planet Earth began almost 2 years ago. It was our Lenten study program, but we opened it up to the greater community. And we're quite amazed at when our church filled up with people coming to hear what was a pretty exciting program. It has continued. So there are a number of people from Trinity still involved, but it has escaped the boundaries of the church and is now a community program. It's when we can actually get back together, we will be back at Trinity using the space. But for us, it will always have something of a spiritual component. We believe that we are called to be good stewards of God's creation. And so this is a part of our work toward increasing our capacity to be living gently and wisely and well, as the title would say. So we're glad that you are all here, and I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Shirley to get things going.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm chair of the Clean Energy Ad Hoc Committee and have the pleasure to introduce our first selectman, Jamie Cosgrove. I think the committee members are unanimous in feeling that he's a pleasure to work with, very supportive, and a really good guy. I think we're very fortunate to have him for our first selectman. Jamie, you're on. I think, Jamie, you're muted. Jamie.
Sorry, I got it.
Okay.
Are you sure? All right. Thank you, Shirley. I just quickly want to say, and I'm going to be sensitive to time. I know there's a lot to get through tonight, and I certainly want to open up to any or stay on for any questions if anyone has anything. But I was just saying it's really a pleasure to work with, the Clean Energy Committee that we've established, and also all the other volunteers that have come since we've established that committee. It's really a lot of people who have been putting in time and looking at different ideas, presenting different ideas and exploring different things. And I want to just thank Trinity and Sharon for hosting this event tonight. And actually for the last 2 years, I have attended a couple of the Living Wisely discussions. I think they're great. They're very informative. And I too look forward to when you can open the doors and welcome us back into your renovated hall. It'd be great to be back there. But I just, the first slide, why does Branford need a clean energy campaign? And, the bullet points really spell it out, right? Energy efficiency saves money. Conserving energy has a positive environmental impact. And those are two things. One thing I would just also add to there, from a town side, when we're evaluating, and we're going to touch on a couple initiatives that we took on, we always evaluate certainly the environmental impact and the cost savings, but also the operational improvements. And you see, that's one thing that I discovered in going through this. We can actually achieve operational benefits by incorporating some of these sustainability measures. With that said, when we first created this committee, the town used to have a clean energy task force. And really, I want to give credit to Shirley McCarthy, who met with me several times to really, hey, let's get a committee back up and running. And what we had created was the Clean Energy Committee, and there was an ad hoc committee, or it is an ad hoc committee of the Board of Selectmen. And the reason why we created it in that manner, I always wanted to have the ability for the committee to come back and advise the town through the first selectman's office or the board of selectmen on the different initiatives that are out there that we can undertake, the educating, the outreach to the public, and what could the town do? Because we had been looking at a number of things over the years after I first took office, but I realized there wasn't a committee that could really recommend or do an analysis for us and look at something. So this was really an extension of what we have done. With that, we always envision doing some public outreach and really a lot of informational program. And the first one is the HeatSmart committee. And that's a volunteer committee that has, and we're going to hear from Mike Cohen, who's the lead on that committee, but there's many volunteers involved. But they're once again doing outreach to the residential community and to speak of efficiency measures, financial incentives, and educate people on heat pumps, the technology, how it can benefit you, but also went through a vetting process to identify qualified contractors. And Mike will get into that. Can we get the next screen, please? And here's this is the Clean Energy Committee. This was the committee that was formed a couple years ago. Greg Ames, Bob Babcock, Elena Cahill, Marshall Cox, Joe Gordon, Bill Horn, Sharon Huntner. John Prinz was a recent member added on it. He's a liaison to the Board of Education. We thought it was important, as the Board of Education is the biggest footprint in our town in terms of buildings. We wanted to have a representative from the board on there. So the Energy Committee had asked the board to appoint somebody, and John Prinz has been sitting on there since, I believe, June or July. Eunice Miller, Dan Rabin, and Diana McCarthy Berkery. She is actually a staff person for the town of Branford. We had a position that became vacant that oversaw the solid waste and recycling program in town. We identified that there was a need in many other areas of sustainability, conservation, not only supporting other departments, but many volunteer committees that we have in town, but also to be the resource for the community. So we expanded that position from solid waste and recycling supervisor to a sustainability and compliance manager. And Diana has been working on a number of projects since she started this past July, as well as working closely with the Clean Energy Group, as well as the HeatSmart Committee. You can go to the next slide, please. Here's just some recent advances that we have made as a town over the last couple of years. Tabor Solar Farm, you'll see a picture of that. That just produces probably about, I think it's roughly about 1.2, 1.3 megs of energy. That's a virtual net metering agreement that we have. I just want to point out, although it looks like there's a lot of greenery around it, that when we built that solar array, we did not disturb, it wasn't disturb any forest land or agricultural land. That was actually, it was a former gravel pit. You may be familiar, over on Tabor Drive, and it was primarily a lot of invasive species and growth that was coming up that was cleared. I think that's important to recognize, because when we're evaluating these, and we also want to be sure we're being conscientious not to disturb valuable ecological land. And that's been a successful project, and we continue to look at other opportunities for solar. The ESG Honeywell, that was a energy performance contract. We had Honeywell come in. They touched pretty much every building, both on the town and school side. The Board of Ed side made energy conservation measures, and we've realized a 30% energy savings with those buildings that they touched. That was a self-funding project. So, and we had to do a measure and verification on an annual basis for the first 3 years. We're going to do it at least. But part of the contract is for the first 3 years to verify that they're meeting the goals. So basically what we're saving on energy is paying for the just about $6 million worth of improvements that we've done to our buildings. On the town government, I mentioned the Clean Energy Ad Hoc Committee that was established in 2019. Coastal Resiliency Fund, that was a fund we look at sea level rise and climate change as a long-term liability, just as we look at any other OPEB or pension liability. So we wanted to create a fund where we're adequately funding and putting away and investing and have an investment policy to meet those long-term liabilities. So where we can certainly use some draw down on that fund to meet projects that we want to address in the short term, but we also are focused on a long term. So we want to be on the right side of compounding interest with those funds. And just one other quick note on that, the governor's is doing they have a report coming out. Our finance director was instrumental. It was really his idea to create this fund through discussions that we've had. And we went and got state legislation to allow municipalities to set up that fund. Jim Finch has made a recommendation as part of the governor's committee that he has working on climate change to create essentially a state fund that they would manage and allow other municipalities to invest in this fund, and the state would manage the fund. And that seems to be getting some support from the state treasurer's office. So that's exciting. Coastal Vulnerability Ad Hoc Working Group, same thing, kind of taking the same approach as with the Clean Energy Committee, right? We want to have a committee that's can also be a conduit and do outreach to the public, and then, you know, whether it's individuals or neighborhoods in addressing, identifying, assessing, and addressing the vulnerable areas to climate change, specifically sea level rise. And that group has been working on some initiatives now. And then, as I mentioned, the sustainability officer. With that, we created, as I said, the HeatSmart with collaboration from PACE. And I will then, as I mentioned, what they're working on, but I know Mike in the committee is going to get into more detail on that. So I know that was a lot. I tried to speak as fast as I could. I didn't want to overwhelm you, but I'm happy to take any questions at the end of everyone's presentation. Thank you.
Hi, folks. It's my duty to explain the energy plan, which became very apparent to us very shortly after Jamie formed the committee, that if we were going to do this in a constructive fashion, we really needed some path to follow. So we sat down, spent a good bit of time figuring out how to go about things. We looked at the state of Connecticut's goals for energy and aligned what we're doing with them. Look for 100% clean energy by 2040. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions to 80% of 2001 levels by 2050. And the essence, you know, the approach focuses first on efficiency, on making sure that we're not wasting energy, then converting to electrification, because there's tremendous efficiency benefits in using electricity as a fuel, and that allows us to go to renewable power sources, so that on electricity, as the days go by and our power comes more and more from renewable or clean sources, our power consumption becomes cleaner and cleaner. So looking to find a way to get down this path, we felt we needed to find out where we are. So we did an assessment of how energy is used in the town. We determined after that what needed to be done to come up with specifics to quantify the steps that we could take to move towards clean energy in an efficient fashion. We want you to know that the plan includes all the energy that we use, buildings, transportation, and everything. And the key to this plan, I think that the point we want to make to people is that the plan is not asking you to make a sacrifice. It's not trying to limit your options. It's not expecting to put any burden on people. It's actually intending to improve everybody's life and to bring savings to people. This efficiency, this use of electricity and the efficiency inherent in that is going to reduce people's costs. We do the next slide. A little more about the plan. And doing the plan actually was an educational experience. I mean, really, most of us were novices at this when we started, and finding our way through the plan and looking at the options and finding the path was a great way for us to learn what we were up against. We found we can use the plan to monitor, to measure progress. One thing that became really apparent to us was we needed to get the plan out, get it out there is the way we put it. Only some 5% of the energy consumption in the community of Branford is by the municipal functions. The other 95% is the residential, business, and industrial uses. So it's not going to help much at all if only the town makes these improvements. The town really has to get the word out and get everybody else on board and get everybody else to understand the advantages that they can accrue by doing this. The other thing we learned is that this is changing rapidly. The technology of energy, the economics of energy are just developing so fast. All of a sudden, renewables are growing rapidly and now out competing fossil fuels. We find, and Mike will probably talk about this when he talks about the HeatSmart program, that people can save money by using heat pumps, electrification, and clean energy instead of burning oil. We're trying to look forward to understand what the energy landscape is going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years. But the thing we learn is we don't know yet. We've got to take our best guess. And the plan to get there has to be a living document. We have to be ready to change as these changes in technology and economics occur. The plan has to change. So the plan is never going to be able to be static. The thing that's been most rewarding, I think, for all of us is that we found that as we talk to the community, people are on board. People understand the importance of this. People are excited about what we're doing. They're receptive, they're enthusiastic. The support we're seeing makes us entirely confident that we can make this happen. We can really do it. And we can do it to make life better and to incur savings for the townspeople. So the plan draft was completed, and I call it a draft, specifically a first draft. It was completed in July. It's on the town website. It's there because we want people to share their thoughts with us. It's an easy, fun read. We want you to look at it, think on it with us, share your thoughts with us, and help us evolve the plan and make it better and better and better as time goes by. That's the end of my segment.
All right, thank you, Greg. My name is Joe Roy. I am the Senior Program Manager for CMC Energy Services. The HeatSmart program is sponsored by the People's Action for Clean Energy, or PACE. HeatSmart's goal is to promote clean energy while saving homeowners money by investing in clean, efficient heat pump systems and solar. By participating in the HeatSmart program, you can save money while reducing the use of fossil fuels and CO2 emissions. Next slide, please. So the HeatSmart program is broken down into 4 potential steps, which with each step digging deeper and deeper into energy and CO2 savings. I will be discussing the first 2 steps. The Home Energy Solutions, or HES program, is step 1. This program is administered by the Connecticut utilities using ratepayer funds that are collected through a charge on customers' energy bills. The current copay for this service is $0. It is free. And the amount of work that is completed at the home is roughly worth about $1,400. This offer is good for customers who signed up by March 31st. We are booking out a little past that at this point, but as long as you get in by that time, there will be no copay. After that time, the copay will be increasing to $50. Step 2 is the deeper energy efficiency improvements, which are identified during the HES audit. There are associated rebates for some measures that pick up the majority of the cost, and I will get into that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So I work for a company called CMC Energy Services. We are proud to be a woman-owned and operated company. We've been in business for 44 years. We employ 63 hardworking individuals in Connecticut, and we're based out of Wallingford. So we are one of the 2 selected vendors chosen to complete the HES audits on behalf of the Branford HeatSmart campaign. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about the HES service itself. If you can advance to the first. Thank you. So essentially what happens is when you identify the need, you'd like to sign up, you talk to one of our CSR representatives. They will ask you questions about your home, the age, the type of home, just to get a better idea for the potential scope of work for your house. They'll offer a virtual assessment. That virtual assessment is one that we can do via Zoom, just like this, to get a better understanding of the home, to help educate you on your home and give you energy saving tips, as well as identify opportunities for light bulbs and power saving strips that we can mail you before the actual in-person audit. When the in-person audit comes, we have our technicians. They'll show up to the home. They'll be following all COVID safety protocols. We follow CDC, the state guidelines, the utility guidelines, and our own internal CMC guidelines. And that does include full PPE, mask at all times, gloves, eye gear, shoe covers, and disinfectant pre and post service. The technicians will then go through your home to do health and safety testing. What that means is they're looking for anything like asbestos containing material or excessive mold or something that would stop us really from doing the full scope of work for the audit. They'll test your gas lines for gas leaks. They'll make sure your furnace or your boiler isn't backdrafting. They just want to make sure that the house is safe before we go ahead and start doing air sealing to make the home more energy efficient. Next bullet. The technicians will start with installing LEDs. We'll replace up to 25 older incandescent style bulbs with LEDs. We also look at water conservation measures, including aerators and shower heads, if you'd like. It's not mandatory. We'd also do 6 feet of pipe wrap on your hot water pipes as well. Next bullet. Then what we call the main show, really the on-the-spot improvement. So the technicians set up what's called a blower door test, a frame and cape with a big fan in your front door. It actually exaggerates all of the drafts in your home, puts a value as to how drafty your house is. The technicians will go around. They'll actually start in the attic and they air seal. So they're actually going to do on-the-spot improvements. They'll air seal top plates in different penetrations. They'll go down to your basement. They'll do the same thing. They'll weather strip doors and caulk windows, and essentially anything that they find with that blower door test, they're going to go ahead and seal for you as part of the scope of work. Should you have ductwork in your home, very similar. We have a fan for that essentially exaggerates and lets us know where the leaks are in your ductwork, and the technicians actually go ahead and seal them that day as well. If you have a slightly disconnected duct or any leaks, you don't want that air spilling out in the attic or in the basement. You want that conditioned air to get to the home so that your home is more comfortable. So we go ahead and do that as well. And then at the end of the day, we review a comprehensive energy report with our findings. We discuss next steps in terms of rebates and what you may qualify for. And our average savings per home we see is $200 to $300 per year. Next slide, please. So there are many rebates on this slide, and this slide does have a lot of information. But the one thing I wanted to point out is that rebates are very robust right now when compared to the historical levels of the program. That's really due to a response to COVID. So it's really a great time to take advantage of these current incentives. You'll see insulation here is $1.70 per square foot. Historically, before COVID, it was $1 per square foot, and you can see it's capped there up to 100%. So we do have customers that have their homes literally insulated at no cost. Windows, there's rebates for windows as well. $50 for double pane, $100 for triple pane, and then the heat pumps, which we like to focus on. There are nice incentives now, larger than we've ever seen previously. You see there, so there's different tiers. Just know that in the past it was maybe $500 to $700 for a system, and now they're giving upwards of $500. Or if you have existing electric heating in your home, or if you have propane or oil and you qualify for a pilot program, you can actually get $1,500 per ton. The average home, depending on the size, a 2,000 square foot home, maybe 3 or 3.5 tons. So the incentive is actually pretty significant for heat pumps. Next slide, please. Oh, and with that, I'll turn it over to Michael Cohen, the HeatSmart coach, who will review the 3rd and 4th steps of the HeatSmart program. Thank you.
The 3rd step of the HeatSmart program is the heat pump, the core of the program. Started the program out for. Next slide. So a heat pump is basically a fancy air conditioner that is also capable of heating your house in the wintertime. In the summertime, the air conditioner works by sending cool liquid into the house, which is heated up by the air in the house, and then it's transferred to the outside air. In the wintertime, it works the opposite way. It sends warm liquid into the house, which is cooled off by the house, and it sends that cold liquid made even cooler out the outside air, and it brings heat back into the house from the outside air. So basically, you can think of a heat pump as one machine which is capable of doing the work of a heater and an air conditioner. Next slide. So heat pumps do save money as compared to other forms of energy. Heat pump is on the left, and as you go across to the right, there's natural gas boilers, oil boiler, natural gas furnace, oil furnace, propane boiler, and currently the most expensive type of energy is electric baseboard energy. Heat pumps are cheaper than most of those. Next slide. So heat pumps do fight global warming, and that's one reason why we're pushing them. And this is a slide that shows you Miami at a high tide during a full moon, and it floods just about every clean tide. Next slide. So the HeatSmart program has been on for several months, and we have right now over 290 leads. We have upwards of 191 HES audits that have been completed or scheduled, and we have a website that you should go to, which is HeatSmartBranfordConnecticut.org. Describes the program, it collects the lead information, and we track the responses from it. So we have preferred HES providers, which are CMC, which you heard from tonight, and NECS. We have a preferred heat pump installer, which is Air Incorporated. Next slide. So Air Incorporated is our preferred heat pump installer. He has competitive vetted process. He is a Branford business with 29 years of experience, and he's done extensive community outreach and education. And he's a good man to work with. The 4th phase of the HeatSmart program is solar panels. Once you have heat pumps working with electricity, it's nice to get that electricity free from the sun. So we have solar panels. Next slide. Solar panels save money and are a hedge against rising utility costs. They decrease fossil fuel dependence, pollution, greenhouse gases, and provide local resilience. When the electricity goes off, if you have battery storage in your house as well as a heat pump, you can just keep right on living in your house without any problems. They create local jobs and economic growth, and they help meet Connecticut's environmental goals. Next slide. So here's how solar savings increase over time. If you have installed heat pumps, you're on the blue line, and your utility bills will stay constant over time. You start saving right in the beginning, but as time goes on, you save more and more as utility bills go up. Next slide. So Branford is participating in the HeatSmart program, and we've currently earned a bronze rating. HeatSmart is a national designation and technical assistance program that helps local governments facilitate residential and business solar energy. So the SolarSmart designation recognizes communities that have taken key steps to address local barriers to solar energy and foster growth of local solar markets. We've joined up with the SolarSmart program. They gave us a list of things to do, and we've done a lot of them, and they've helped us encourage people to use solar power. Next slide. So as I said before, we received the bronze designation, and we're hoping to go on to the silver designation. Next slide. So if you want to get started with HeatSmart program, get the benefits of an HES audit, and then consider going on to do deeper efficiency measures in your home, consider a HeatSmart, and consider a heat pump, and also consider solar. The way to do that is to go to HeatSmartBranfordCT.org. That's HeatSmartBranfordCT.org, or you can just do a web search on HeatSmart Branford, and we will get you started. You can also call the telephone number that's listed there, 203-815-1377, and mention HeatSmart. Next slide. So this Bob Backdrop is here with a wrap-up. Bob there?
To kind of put it all together, why clean energy? First of all, the obvious reason it's going to save you money. Secondly, it'll save energy. We will pollute less. We will help fight global warming, and we'll help meet Connecticut's clean energy goals, which have been discussed earlier. The HeatSmart campaign really helps in all of these initiatives, right from the initial audit, right through whatever campaign you want to get into with the HeatSmart or the SolarSmart. Having said that, I'd like to introduce the next person, Elena Cahill, and she's going to talk about The Power of Economics, a book that she wrote earlier. Elena?
No, I'm not going to talk about that book right now. Thank you for putting this slide in here. Hi, everybody. Let's go on. I don't know who's managing the slides. There we go. Past, present, future. The team has done a great job sharing the Branford Clean Energy Committee evolved and then demonstrating how much they were able to accomplish in such a short time. And that brings us to where the future can take us. And it really is remarkable. I feel how much dedication this committee has and how much work they do. They work tirelessly. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think somebody's working on something, and being productive. And there's more that isn't being brought out right now, but there's so many elements and so much work that's being done. It really is remarkable. The next slide, please. From dependence on fossil fuel to sustainable energy, we want to conserve energy. And we heard that early on from Greg, right? Like the most important thing is to not size making energy to an inefficient building or system. So the goal one is to make sure that we're conserving energy as much as possible, be energy efficient, and then get into generating clean energy so that you're only generating as much as you need. The goals, as we all know, cleaner air, energy available for all communities. That comment probably goes out farther than Branford and into areas of the world where energy is not available and or reliable. having local reliable energy as well as reliable energy throughout the planet, and an everlasting supply of energy so that we're not always worried about the energy source being not available for us. Next slide. Adopting technologies which require less energy is energy efficiency. So these are just some definitions because we use the word efficiency and conservation, and just so that we're all on the same page. If we took a light bulb that was a CFL light bulb and we replaced it with an LED light bulb, that's energy efficiency. The modality itself became more energy efficient. Energy conservation is when our behaviors are more energy conserving. So that means turning off the light when you leave the room. And energy conservation would apply if we had a CFL bulb or an LED bulb. It's still the same goal. Don't use energy or waste energy if possible. The behavior part of this is, I think all of us would agree in this room, it's just so critically important for sustainability long term. Adopting behaviors in all of our lives. And I don't remember if we're going to get into composting, but whether it be, with the energy that we're using that we can physically touch, whether it's picking up waste, recycling food, composting food, we can keep going. It really becomes behavioral patterns. I got to meet, this is kind of a side note, I only met Sharon a year ago during this first event. And I was so impressed by what you were just always thinking of for your church and that Lenten calendar. And I brought it home and I brought it to work and I copied it because I was just so amazed by what you do there. And really, I just thought that you should literally go into helping people to change behaviors and patterns, because that calendar really does that, I think. Okay, so that's conservation, using less energy, making sure we don't use anything more than we need, efficiency, changing the modality. There are monetary incentives for both. And as I believe Joe was saying earlier, the money right now is phenomenal. The money right now, I think it's the best I've ever seen it. And I don't know if that will remain. I actually think it's unlikely to remain that high. So there's incredibly good resources right now to help people become more efficient. In addition to that, there's free money. So that's the free money. And there are also a lot of ways to finance these projects. So, first is getting the free money, and then it is also that there are a lot of financing sources as well. Next slide, please. The future building codes, and there's actually a building code event coming up, and I wish I had that information. I don't know if anybody on this Zoom, but there is a building code event coming up for the state of Connecticut. So the future is hoping that the building codes really require buildings to be built net zero. I don't think that's the next phase, although it's happening, I think, quicker, maybe some other parts of the country, but we do want to keep an eye on our building codes. We want to have an impact on our building codes. And there is a building code event coming up with the gentleman who handles that for the state of Connecticut out of Deep. And I don't recall the date, but we could probably Google that. Laws are going to be changing. Not in the state of Connecticut, but in other parts of the United States and very close to us, as in New York City and Boston and Cambridge. There are laws that mandate that you have an energy audit and then become more efficient. So the law would say that step one is you have to have an energy audit, and then step two will be that you have to reduce your carbon output. That was learned based on that energy audit. And I think that when I started working on this, it was really commercial buildings, 50,000 square feet and greater. And now I see all combinations. So those laws are now applying to buildings that are commercial, buildings that are multi-use, buildings that are residential. There's a map available that you can find that gives you everywhere in the United States and these ordinances that are applying. I don't know when it'll happen in Connecticut, but I suspect at some point these laws will take a place in Connecticut as well. Transportation becoming electrified. Is Sharon on this Zoom? Let me see if I can see. Sharon's been doing a tremendous amount of work in our group on electrification of vehicles. It's wonderful. And then energy creation, something we hear a lot about, which is actually making energy in the various ways that you can. Solar, wind, geothermal, biomass, hydro, tidal. and the various ways, which all of the technology is being improved upon every single day, and the cost structures are going down, incentives going up. I feel like we have an administration right now that is aligned with this, and we'll hopefully see some positive changes to that down the road. Next slide. Oh, there's the map. So excellent. So this is the map for the laws and the ordinances throughout the United States. You know, and it's funny, like I said, when I first learned of it, there would have been 2 dots on this map in one color, and now it just keeps expanding. Next slide. Storage in the future. Many sustainable energy sources. I'm sorry, I think that's my puppy you're hearing in the background. Many sustainable energy sources allow us to produce energy at locations not possible, but energy must be used. Okay, so storage, batteries are, we had a conversation about this the other day. Batteries do not make energy, batteries only store energy. And if you combine batteries with technology, not only can you store energy, you can also deploy that energy at a time that's most favorable to our grid. So this is becoming something that is being more widely used from both residential all the way through grid scale. We can use them with these other modalities as well. I think that you're going to see incentives coming out for batteries this year. There are some already, I think we'll see more. And again, batteries are amazing because even if you didn't have a generation site at your house, you could actually take energy from the grid and still deploy the battery using technology and help the grid by stabilizing your demand at home. So I feel like this is an awful lot of information, but these words are going to become more commonplace. I think in the near future, you're going to see batteries in people's homes. They'll act as a generator of sort. They'll act for your personal use if there's a power outage. They'll act to help our grid collectively so that, let's say it's a really hot day in the summertime, and instead of us turning on another power plant to make the energy they need for air conditioning, they'll be able to take energy off these battery sources, which will save us even lighting up another power plant before we get to the point that we don't use power plants anymore. But there's a lot of really good technologies coming up for this in the future. All right, it says here, our future, we will create more energy while we use less energy and are both more mindful and accountable. Boy, that sentence really kind of sums it all up, right? Use as little energy as possible, try to make it locally, and we're going to hopefully start thinking about what we're doing. The accountability piece, well, I'm not sure how that will shake out, if there'll ever be a carbon tax or not, but in places there aren't any right here, right now. But in some places, the accountability would equate to a carbon tax. Next slide. All right, questions. Thank you, everybody.
I have a question I'd like to put to Elena, and it picks up on a point she was making. I saw an article in the paper the last couple of days, it was probably the New York Times, saying that the Biden administration may tend to continue to put forward building codes that are stricter or more in line with energy efficiency, but builders tend to be against these codes because it adds cost to the price of a new home. Are we getting to the point where we can gain efficiency, but it doesn't have to cost us, so that we can get builders supporting the tightening of codes or the restructuring of codes as well?
So interesting, because there's a lot of variables in building costs. And I think this past year, 2020, probably magnified that more than any year I've seen in recent history. Was, you know, people were staying home, they were doing more work, and building costs skyrocketed, you know, and you couldn't get what you needed. Builders were at a deficit to be able to get what they needed. And then we have to get into steel costs and the market for steel and how that affects building costs. So if I was to say something as basic as everything that's energy efficient is becoming less expensive in cost, I think that's a fair statement. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but I definitely think costs are going down. But I think we have to be mindful when we talk about building is there are many variables in building costs. And it is interesting because the architects, I feel, I'm going to go back I'm going to step back from the builders for a second and say, I think architects, if we sell architects on the idea, I think we're going to have an easier idea selling the builders, because the builders listen to the architects. And I think the incentives aren't always applied for. So the builders don't often know the incentives. And then it becomes, whose job is it to apply for the incentive? So in the world of incentives, if you're building, there's a new building incentive, and it's a cost per square foot that they'll give you if you build more efficient than code. So in the commercial world, if you build a building more efficient than code, if it's 10% more efficient, it gets $1 amount. If it's 30% more efficient, it gets a much higher dollar amount. Very few times do I see builders and architects even aware of that. So if they knew that and applied for that money and were more energy efficient and they got the cash, the incentive money to help them, maybe they wouldn't be afraid of doing it. But the question is, are they even aware it exists? Very few builders and architects that I know of even know that the incentive exists, never mind how to actually apply for it, because it requires building modeling. And then they get nervous that they have to model the building, but they're modeling the building anyway, but they're just nervous about it because it might be written in a different context. So excellent question. There are many variables to building costs. The market dictates a little bit of what these cost. And then at the same time, there are incentives to offset the cost. The question is whether or not the architects and the builders know that, and if they're applying for them. I'm sorry, that was such a long-winded answer.
I'd like to pick up on what Elena said and call to your attention the fact that this is a mindset thing. The builders are concerned that it's going to make their homes expensive, but the builders don't have the orientation that the homeowner has. If the builders convey to the homeowners that their building is going to be less expensive to live in and more comfortable, then I think you can sell the idea.
It seems to me that what is needed is a way to get this information to the architects and the builders. So is that an initiative that something like, oh gosh, Living Wisely and Well on Planet Earth might consider? And how could we enlist you all to help us? I mean, that it might be something we could work on together to create some sort of a program to bring this information to our local builders and our architects.
But I think it's also incumbent on purchasers of homes, whether they be new or renovated, to ask the appropriate questions too about what's gone into the home that will make it more efficient long-term.
I also think that every home should be sold with an estimate of the cost to heat and cool it. And what would happen if you did that, you'd see that the carrying cost of a home that had energy efficiency built into it would be a lot less than the carrying cost of a home that was built as cheaply as possible, just barely to meet code.
Yeah,
Yes,
I just want to add to that too.
Carry that past a home into any building. LEED, the U.S. Green Building Council, did a study on this and said that there is a correlation between the value and the carbon output. So the lower the carbon output, the higher the value. But yes, so I think it's definitely true and applies to both commercial and residential buildings for cost.
We've actually had some preliminary discussion with people at the utilities, and they have people who work with new construction, primarily of large commercial and industrial. They work with new construction. They also work with renovations, and their job is to do energy advice and to inform people about the incentives. So we have a discussion with Joe Roy and some of those people coming up next week to figure out exactly what you said, Sharon, is how do we bring that information to the commercial sector and eventually to people who are constructing residential homes as well. Joe, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add 2 points. Thank you. One was to Michael Cohen's comment. So the part of the HES service that you can opt into, it's called the Department of Energy Home Energy Score. where essentially the technician will gather up all the information on your home, put it into this calculator. It rates your home from a 0 to a 10 in terms of efficiency, almost like the mile per gallon equivalent of the home. And we show you where you are when we're done. And then if you were to make those recommendations on top of and go deeper, where you'd be. And there's been a lot of work over the last, I don't know, almost 5 years now of trying to do that, trying to make it mainstream, trying to put it on the MLS listing. There's a lot of talk about it. We've been doing thousands of them. There's data there. It just hasn't happened yet. And then on the new construction side, we actually do a lot of new construction testing for the IECC codes. And I have 2 comments there. One is that I don't see a lot of enforcement by the towns. Even the enforcement officials aren't really aware of what's out there. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Branford. We do work throughout the state. And secondly, a lot of the contractors are not building up to code, and they're not passing those levels, essentially, how tight the home is. So yeah, that's been our experience. But I think the DOE home energy score on the HES side of things, on the residential side of my Cohen, could be the solution one day. And I know different countries like Australia actually has that, where it's part of the home sale. It actually increases value based on how many stars the home has. So hopefully we are heading
there. Question for Jamie. Where are we in between bronze and silver?
For the SoulSmart,
Yeah.
I know we're close.
I could help with that one if you like. We have to do a little bit more training within the city, within the municipality government, and there is one ordinance that has to be passed regarding explicitly saying that solar energy is allowed in all major zoning districts. So there are those 2 pieces. We have enough points. We've shot enough hoops to get to the silver, but we have to do those 2 pieces. I think the training is pretty straightforward. There are a couple of videos that have to be watched by someone in Harry Smith's group. But the town ordinance is something we're working with them on now.
That's a zoning regulation.
Does that have, what does that do when you have a part of your town that's a part of an historic district? I mean, can you see people being really happy with great big solar panels on the roof of Trinity Church? It's
Love
gonna
it.
change the effect of the beautiful historic downtown.
Are you asking if we would like to see solar panels or
I would like to see solar panels on it, but in terms of, the historic appropriateness of how we keep keep the town looking. Anyway, I mean, is that a piece of what might be a holdup on passing such an ordinance?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything that precludes in any district allowing somebody to attach solar to their building. I think, but what I think they have to, from what I'm hearing, is change it so that there are some design review areas. So I think it just is about a language saying that there is nothing that would come up and preclude somebody from doing it, a zoning regulation. So I think right now our zoning regs aren't addressing it in either way. And I think they need the zoning to take a position in stating that solar panels are acceptable in all zoning districts, go that far. I do just want to add to this SoulSmart, and I think, and Dan can, I mean, we're probably one of the first, there's only a few communities in this area that have reached this designation. I just attended a COG meeting. For those who don't know, it's our Council of Government. So as you know, do know, state of Connecticut does not have county governments. So what we have, Council of Governments in the state is broken up in 7 different councils. And our COG is looking to become Soul Smart certified region. So they're having a couple, 2 seminars, which are worth 40 points towards certificate, getting a designation. So the region is also looking as well, but of course we want to continue to be a leader in this and advance from bronze to silver and then beyond. But it's good to see that the region is doing something as well, or is interested.
Yeah.
If, say Guilford or Madison wanted to become involved in the HeatSmart program, what would be the first kind of step they would have to take?
They should contact PACE, People's
PACE.
Action for Clean Energy,
Okay,
and that's who they would start the HeatSmart program with.
Guilford actually has approached us. We met with somebody from the Sustainability Committee about how to go about it.
mm-hmm.
So I think Guilford will do it.
Do you?
And we're also there.
Great, great.
Elena, on the map that you showed us that now has lots of nice colored dots, California was orange. Why was that?
I'm sorry, what is orange?
California was the whole state of California. It was the only orange state on the map, I think.
Yes, which means that everybody, if we go to the map, I'm going to pull it up on another computer. Well, it just means basically everyone's accountable for using the benchmark. And if you look here, the orange dot, benchmarking policy for public, commercial, and multifamily buildings adopted. So the Department of Energy has a free benchmarking tool. And we actually used it for the town of Branford buildings as well. And that benchmarking tool is available throughout the entire country. And what they said in California was everybody needs to know their carbon output and then they need to keep reducing it. So it's amazing. But the awareness of knowing the carbon output, first and foremost, is amazing. Because most people would have absolutely no idea. And then it's a matter of whether or not they decided that you have performance goals against those. And if we look up at Washington, Seattle, I'm sorry, the whole state of Washington, requirements of achieving performance targets or completing additional actions. So I'm wondering if you can see New York City from here, because New York City has that as well. You'll see orange and purple.
Yeah.
Boston has it as well. So they're saying, one, you need to understand your carbon output. So that requires benchmarking, and the government gives us a free tool. The federal government gives us a free tool to do that. And then in some areas, it says you have to go further and then reduce the carbon output. You don't see this very often, and I don't think we see it at all in residential homes, unless they're multifamily units. So, but let's not be surprised if we don't see down the road that they're going to want us to know what that carbon output is, even at the residential home.
Okay, thank you.
California leads normally. Like California has a mandate that you have to build with solar. They're normally leading the charge on efficiency, conservation, and generation.
Just to be clear, I think Elena's comment that they're leading the charge as a state, but when it comes to a municipality. Branford.
Branford, yay!
Yay.
Woohoo!
There you
I
go.
have a question for Greg about the energy plan. Some people have complained that the energy plan is unfair and biased and so forth. My question is the energy plan relevant for people who do not believe in climate change? How much of that underlying faith, should we say, in climate change goes into the energy plan?
I think you asked if the energy plan was relevant for people that don't believe in climate change. Yeah, it's relevant. Uh, it's a sorry state of affairs that they don't perceive it. You know, I think there's a lot of wishful thinking goes on here and a lot of alternative facts. I think it's a lot of fear. You know, people don't understand that energy conservation and alternative energy can improve our lives, can save us money, can create jobs, can be a real stimulus to the economy and to the quality of our life. And you know, as time goes by, that changes. You know, I've been watching these statistics for a few years now, and more people are beginning to believe global warming and that it's man-made, and to support the kinds of initiatives that we're looking at here. You know, I think some people still believe the Earth is flat. I can't help you with that.
I heard
I'd like to add
someone,
You
something.
just got to keep talking to people, keep
I
working on it.
heard someone say, what if climate change is not real and we've made all these improvements for nothing?
It's good for public health.
This is Bill Horn. I think the energy plan is relevant to anybody that wants to save money on their running their household, you know. And you know, there are a variety of reasons why you might want to undertake the things that are outlined in the energy plan. I think another thing, you know, some feedback we've been getting is that, you know, all this is going to be forced on people. This is what we must do. There's no stick involved in the energy plan. You know, nobody's going to go out and make you become more efficient or make you get, you know, an electric vehicle. We hope you do. And there are reasons for doing it, even if you don't believe in climate change. So it's a map forward, and you can follow the map or not follow the map.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna, you know, say that I always encourage everybody or anybody to truly review the plan, review the document before, I guess, coming to a conclusion of what it is. Right? You know, as Greg laid it out, it really, and Bill just said, it's a roadmap to achieve a certain goal. And that goal is not only a reduction or elimination of a reduction in the carbon footprint, but there's conservation and energy conservation and efficiency measures, which, as we showed, will also long-term lead to money, you know, dollar savings. And it always meant to be a living document. There's nothing in there. So, you know, I've talked to a few individuals who've had expressed concern. And I said, well, let's walk through the document and show me where the concern is. And each and every time they weren't able to point to anything within the document. It was really centered around, well, I don't know if there is climate, climate change going on, or if it's man-made, if we're really the cause. It has nothing to do with the document itself. Unfortunately, I think, you know, if we're wrong about it, well, I think I heard Shirley say, well, it leads to a cleaner environment. There's health. It's a healthier environment. So there's a benefit there, right, to our own individual's health. I mean, there's the monetary benefit that, you know, you can realize. And as I said, what we've noticed on the town side, when you start to look into these sustainable measures, you many times will identify an operational benefit. So I think that's how you have to approach these things. I will just say, you know, real quickly, when we rolled out, came forward and got the funding for the Coastal Resiliency Fund, and we initially requested $1 million to fund that fund. And when the finance director, Jim Finch, and I went and did the presentation, we were very clear. We just went, and there was a lot of people who probably didn't know this was even coming forward until we actually put it on the Board of Finance agenda. But we were clear, we didn't want to debate climate change or the cause, right? We said, listen, something is happening to our environment that we can document, whether it's man-made or naturally made. There's something happening, and we need to take measures to address these impacts that's going to have on our community. And that's what we did to try to avoid, the divisive debate that can occur. I think you got to look at the common denominator. What's the benefit? It's strange. I talked to a few people on that. I said, if we didn't call it a coastal resiliency fund, I said, think of it as an infrastructure fund. Oh, well, I would support that. It's like, then why don't you call it that? Well, we're being specific on what we want to use it for. So, these are challenges that we face, but I think we're all in it to meet the greater good of the community. I'm sorry, Elena, I went on. You go ahead.
That's
No,
good.
like perfect. I was just going to say the same thing kind of. It's, we had a couple power outages, and if you had a power outage and you had a battery and you didn't have to throw away all the food in your refrigerator, I don't think we'd care what we're calling it. We would just be happy we didn't throw away all the food in our refrigerator.
Yeah.
Some of this is pragmatic. It's, yes, it's going to have cleaner air, and yes, it's going to be better for many causes that we all believe in, but some of it is just real pragmatic benefit. And I think sometimes you said it so well, Jamie, we don't have to debate the underlying, just accept the reality of it. But this particular plan gives no orders at all, which is really nice. So it's a plan, but it's a plan that it doesn't mandate anything. It's really education. And I think so much of what this committee does as a whole is education.
Yeah, and I just want to say, when the Clean Energy Committee presented this plan at the Board of Selectmen, and it was a week or a couple weeks after we had the storms that knocked out power to a number of neighborhoods, but in particular a neighborhood and a street, really, but a neighborhood, but there's a street on it which consists of two for Branford, larger senior housing complexes. And I remember making the comment, is like, if we had some of these measures, these recommendations in place, these residents wouldn't have gone 6 days without power. They wouldn't have lost all their food. They could have had a sustainable local power that would have been up and running. And again, that's what it is, trying to address some of our vulnerabilities within our infrastructure as well.
I just want to mention that our next session in 2 weeks will be hearing from Peter Millman of PACE, talking about community aggregation and local powers of local resistance in the grid. So encourage you all to come back and hear from Peter. I believe he works with you, Michael, in PACE.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to having him. And as a person who lives in Guilford but goes to Trinity, I just can't tell you how impressed I am with all that Branford is doing, and the Clean Energy Committee's work has been so impressive, and the support from you, Jamie, and the Board of Selectmen has been so impressive, and I'm just really impressed.
If our house weren't so efficient, we'd sell it and move to Branford.
We need to have HeatSmart in Branford and Guilford too.
Yeah.
So that's 2 weeks, same time, same place?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be, I think the link is the same. So look forward to having you back with us. Spread the word. We'll just keep working on getting the word of your program out. And we'll do our best for you, and because we know you're doing your best for us. So thank you all very much. We'll just keep at it, and glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks to our
Thank you.
speakers and
Thank
the work
you.
they're doing.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.